Okay, welcome back from your lunch break, everyone. Nice to see all of you guys back. I'm going to continue on helping you guys to learn the path to enlightenment by sharing this topic of breathing mindfulness meditation with you guys. At this point, you've done breathing mindfulness meditation with me at least 3 times if you've been here yesterday and today. So you've had an opportunity to experience it. Well, now I'm going to go in, I'm going to actually teach you all the ins and outs of it so that way you can actually develop your practice more readily. So just like always, if you guys would like to ask questions, you can use the microphones here, and anyone online, you can use Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So first, just to get us started with understanding this topic of meditation, I'd like to share some meditation basics just to kind of help lay down some groundwork to understand the definitions of how I'm describing things. Now, your definitions of things could be very different than what I'm describing, but at least when I use the word meditation, you'll understand what I'm meaning. What I mean when I say the word meditation is that it is a technique to actively train the mind during dedicated, independent, purposeful training sessions to eliminate unwholesome qualities of the mind and or cultivate wholesome qualities of the mind in the positions of seated, lying, standing, and walking. So these are the 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And what you're doing in meditation is you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities. I'm going to show you what those are when we get into this topic so you can know what it is you're eliminating from your mind with this breathing mindfulness meditation and what is it that you're cultivating. So just like I teach what something is, I also like to teach what something is not, because it's going to help you to understand what something is. Meditation is not exercising, walking the dog, gardening, these kinds of things, because nowadays, all too often, someone might say, oh, I'm going to go for a drive and meditate, or I'm going to go to the gym and meditate, or I'm going to go walk the dog and meditate. Well, if you thought that those things were meditation, and you hear me say, it's wise to meditate 2 or 3 times a day for 30 minutes or longer, and all you did is go walk the dog for 2 or 3 times a day for 30 minutes or longer, you're not going to be able to get to enlightenment that way. Now, while you might surely enjoy those things, and they might be things that you actually end up doing, that's not meditation. And it's important for you to not see it that way. So this is meditation, a dedicated, independent, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities and cultivating certain wholesome qualities. It's important that you have a meditation teacher. As you guys heard yesterday, there's only one type of individual that would be able to get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. And that's an actual Buddha. They don't need teachers or guides, but everybody else is going to need teachers and guides. So in terms of your meditation practice, you're going to need somebody that's going to be there for you as a guide. It's still your practice. You're on your own independent journey to enlightenment. A teacher is essentially like a tour guide pointing out for you the things that you need to learn, but it's your journey to enlightenment. But you're going to need somebody to reach out to occasionally, because you can't ask a book questions, right? You're going to need somebody to ask questions to. And there's people in the world that don't understand this, and there's people that run into a lot of difficulties and struggles by not having a teacher. So I'm going to share one of those stories with you to be able to help you understand the importance of actually having a teacher and why it's important. There was an individual who contacted me several years ago who, for about 2 years, was trying to get to enlightenment by themselves. They didn't understand that they needed a teacher and guide. They were reading books, they were watching videos, they were listening to podcasts, things like this. And after about 2 years, they got to a point where they were sleeping 23 hours a day. They were having obsessive thoughts. By the way, this person was a doctor. They were a physician, right? So it was an educated person, right? So they were a doctor and physician in their country. They were sleeping 23 hours a day. They were having obsessive thoughts. They were having suicidal thoughts. Their relationships were falling apart. They couldn't go to work any longer. And they had all these kinds of challenges and difficulties with their mind because they didn't understand that they needed a teacher. At one point, they figured out that they needed some help from somebody. So they reached out to me and asked for help. And I tried to help them as best as I could through the internet and having appointments with them and messaging them and things like that. But after about 3 or 4 months, I realized it was too strong of an issue, and I invited this person to come to Thailand, and they came here and they spent some time here, and I helped them. They went back to their home country, and over a period of time, they worked themselves out of those challenges. They did end up losing their relationship with their fiance, but they got back to work. They weren't sleeping 23 hours a day, no more suicidal thoughts, anything like that, no more obsessive thoughts, right? I don't suspect that you will ever have that issue, because you understand that it's important to have a teacher and a guide. But this person kind of worked themselves into a corner because they didn't understand that they needed teachers and guides. So when they were having complications and difficulties, they didn't have anybody to reach out to. They just kept doing certain things that were detrimental to the health of their mind. So if you have somebody that you can reach out to, you can get some help, and then you won't end up in that same situation. Because sometimes students reach out to me, and what they hear from me is they say, oh, that's normal, just keep going. And that'll give you some confidence, right? You don't need to be in touch with me any particular point in time or any frequency of time. You can reach out to me at any point. And if there's someone else in your life that you would rather them be your meditation teacher, then great, find that person and build a relationship with them. But you're going to need somebody that you can feel confident that when you send them a message or you send them an email or you've called them by the phone, that they're going to pick up your phone or they're going to write you back in an email and give you the help that you need, because you're going to need that guidance along the way. So because you know that it's important to have a teacher, I don't suspect you'll have any of those issues that individual had. In fact, I've never had any of the students that study with me have those same kinds of situations. They've always gotten the help that they needed. They might have been having suicidal thoughts before they started learning with me, and then they had some suicidal thoughts while they were learning with me, but then they worked themselves out of that through training their mind. So you can get the help that you need. You can reach me at any point. It can be 10 years from now. I might not hear from you for 10 years. You can write me a message, say, hey, David, I need your help. Hey, I'm right here to help you, right? Unconditional love. So feel free to reach out at any time. Then there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught, because you're not going to be able to use, or you're not going to be able to be in the same position all the time. Your body is going to need these different positions. So if you learn these different positions, it's like building a tool belt to be able to help you at any given time. Because while you might use, say, for example, the seated position frequently, you're going to need these other positions at different times, because you're not going to always be able to sit. As you age, as you maybe have an accident or things like this, you're going to need different positions at different times. So I'm going to explain to you what these 4 positions are and how to use them so that you can understand that. And then I'm going to allow you guys to be able to practice any of these positions that you like. So for example, the seated position, this is the primary position that a lot of people use. This is like the go-to position, right? You're sitting on the floor or sitting in a chair. You might be on a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair. You can sit however you like. There's not just one way to sit. But oftentimes when people are on the floor, they sit with cushions under their rear. They're going to cross their legs just lightly. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. And then keep your upper body erect with your sternum up and your shoulders back. This is going to keep your mind attentive and alert during the meditation. And it also helps you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable, you could use this, but it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees or their palms up, or some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can put your hands and arms wherever you're comfortable. There isn't just one way to sit. If there's anybody who's trying to force you to sit in a specific position, they're not understanding the very first teaching of the Buddha, which is the universal truth of impermanence, that not everybody can sit in the same position. It's just not possible, right? So you can sit however you're comfortable. There isn't just one way to sit. You can sit in a chair, and a bench, and a sofa, or a wheelchair. You're training the mind. You're not training the body. So you don't need to train the body. You just need to train the mind, right? So if you're in a chair, you might sit with your feet flat on the floor or lightly crossed at the ankles. But this is a chair too that I'm sitting in, and you can see I'm sitting with my legs crossed. So that's an option for you as well. And then the same thing with the hands and arms. You can put them wherever you're comfortable. And then the upper body would be helpful if it was nice and erect. And when you're in the seated position, there can be challenges sometimes. You can have back pain or hip pain or something like that. And if you can shift and you can move your body and get into a better position, then great, you've just solved that. But that's also where the lying position comes in, that you can lie flat on the floor, face up, with your arms out to the side. For those of you guys that are familiar with yoga, I think they call this resting pose or corpse pose or shavasana, they call it this. So you could use these different positions, either seated or lying. Lying is really good if you have aches and pains in the body, because all your muscles are completely relaxed and you're face up. But then in the seated position, and sometimes in the lying position as well, you could be falling asleep. right? And this can be detrimental to your meditation practice. So that's where standing position comes in, that you can stand up with your feet at shoulder width, and you can clasp your wrists in the front, put your arms along the sides, or maybe put them behind you. And now you can be meditating from the standing position. It'll keep your mind more attentive and more alert. You're still doing the exact same thing with the mind. You're just changing the body position. Other situations that I've used the standing position is like if I'm at a bus stop and I know that the bus isn't coming for like 20 minutes or so, and there's nowhere to sit down, I'll just stand there and meditate, right? Might as well get a little bit of meditation in. Or maybe I'm at a government office and there's like a line of people and I know this line only moves every 10 minutes or every 15 minutes. I would just stand there and do some meditation. I don't consider it one of my 2 or 3 for 30 minutes or longer, but it's like a little touch-up, little 5 minutes here, little 10 minutes there. No harm in that, right? So you can use standing position for something like that. But now, if you're experiencing any of these things, not only when you're falling asleep can you use the standing, but you can also use walking. If you're falling asleep in your meditation, you could use walking position. And I'm going to teach you guys that tomorrow afternoon. Walking is also good if you have an overactive mind and you're kind of hyped up, and the last thing you're thinking about is sitting down and being still, and you're just like, no way am I going to be still, right? So you can use walking position for that because you're going to actually be moving. It's very intentional walking. So I'm going to be teaching you that tomorrow afternoon. So these are the 4 positions. But remember, just like everything, you're not believing me. Don't believe me about anything whatsoever. You're going to need to use these positions on your own and see in what situations do they work well for you and in what situations they don't work well. I just gave you examples from my practice of things that I observe, but you need to figure this out for yourself. You need to cultivate the wisdom. So you can try it in the situations that I mentioned, but if you have other situations that you're like, I'd like to try standing or I'd like to try walking, go for it. See how it works for you, right? So you're not locked in here. It's your independent practice. I'm just a guide. I'm just helping you to see some things that you maybe aren't understanding yourself. Okay, so these are the meditation basics. Any questions on any of this stuff? No questions? Okay. So now, starting and conducting a meditation session, the first thing to understand is that the mind is the boss and the body is the employee. What I mean by that is you need to go through the employee in order to get to the boss, right? And if the employee is painful, in pain, it's not going to take you to go see the boss. But also if the employee is luxurious, not going to take you to go see the boss. You like the body to be in the middle where it's comfortable, because then you can go see the boss. You can train. So you're going to need to go through the body in order to get to the mind, in order to be able to train the mind. So you'd like the body to be comfortable. If at any point you're experiencing pain in the body, just change your position. You don't have to lock into a position and stay there the whole time. If you're 3 minutes, 5 minutes into your meditation, you're noticing some pain, just switch to lying position, right? That's an option for you. So don't feel like you have to stay in the same position, because if the employee is just experiencing pain, it's not going to take you to go see the boss. So you'd like to be able to have the body in the middle where it's not painful and it's not luxurious. The Buddha teaches, when he's describing meditation, because you can see the teachings of the Buddha, exactly how he teaches meditation. He says, set up mindfulness in front of you before you start meditating. Okay, so mindfulness, you know now, is awareness of mind. So he teaches you to set up some awareness of your mind before you start meditating. Don't just plop down into meditation, but bring some awareness to your mind, right? Because then you're going to get more benefit out of the meditation itself. And for me, that's what chanting does. Chanting is really helpful at bringing some awareness to the mind. So if you chant, wonderful, you're already doing that. But if you decide not to chant for any reason, do something to kind of set up some awareness of mind as you're easing into meditation, because you'll get more benefit out of the meditation itself. In terms of your time, frequency, and schedule for meditation, let me ask you guys a question. Can you meditate at exactly the same time every day? No? Why? The universal truth of impermanence tells you you cannot do that. It is impossible to meditate at exactly the same time every day. So don't even try, right? Don't set it up on your schedule. Don't be like 8 a.m. every day, I'm going to meditate, right? Because you're just going to set yourself up. You're going to sabotage your ability to be successful. But what the Buddha did is he meditated 3 times a day, morning, midday, and evening, right? So you'd like to have these anchor points for yourself, that somewhere in the morning, you'd like to be meditating. Somewhere in the evening, you'd like to be meditating. And then if you can get a midday meditation in, that would be great. There isn't any special time to meditate. Sometimes people will tell you, oh, you have to meditate at 3:30 a.m. every day. And if you meditate at 3:30 a.m. every day, this is what's going to produce enlightenment. Well, I can assure you there's nothing special happening at 3:30 a.m. that's going to make your meditation any better or any worse if you meditate at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. or any other time. And this is someone who doesn't understand impermanence, right? Because how could you meditate at 3:30 a.m. every day? It's just not possible, right? And if the Buddha got to enlightenment 2,500 years ago, he didn't meditate at exactly 3:30 every day. And you know how I know that? Because watches didn't even exist 2,500 years ago. He didn't know that it was 3:30 a.m., right? So when people are saying these kinds of things, you got to use your mind. You got to think through it like, hold on a second. What is this person really sharing, right? So you need to be your own independent thinker when you're hearing these kinds of things. So you can meditate morning, midday, and evening. This is where the Buddha did. This is what he did. And this is where you'll see the most results. But even if you get 2 meditations in per day, you're going to make your way to enlightenment. 1 meditation a day, you're not going to get to enlightenment in this lifetime. But 2 per day, you'll definitely make your way to enlightenment. 3 per day, you're just going to get there a bit sooner, right? Quite a bit sooner. So if you're going to meditate in the evening, it's important that you do this while your mind is still attentive and still alert. If you usually go to bed at 10 p.m., you'd like to be meditating around 9:15, something like that. So your mind is still attentive and alert. But that doesn't mean you couldn't meditate at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. or 8 p.m., because you surely could. You would just like to be sure that your mind is a bit more attentive and alert before you meditate. So don't wait until you're sleepy and then start meditating, because you're just going to fall asleep during your meditation. In terms of timing your meditation, right? I suggest that you don't time your meditation, like set an alarm. Because if you set an alarm, there's one of 2 things that are going to happen. You're going to be in meditation and you're going to be thinking, is it time yet? Is it time yet? Is it time yet? Is it time yet? Right? That's what your mind's going to be doing. It's going to be craving, longing, yearning. And that's what you're working to get rid of. Or you're going to be deep in meditation, getting all kinds of benefit. Man, why did I set my alarm? I could have got so much more benefit, right? So if you don't have to set your alarm, it's best not to set your alarm. But, sometimes going to work in the morning, maybe you only have 20 minutes and that's all you got. And you need to set your alarm. So go ahead, set your alarm, right? But in the weekends or on the evenings, maybe you don't need an alarm. Just meditate without an alarm. The way that you gauge your meditation is you look at your clock before you meditate. Okay, 9 a.m. Now you start meditating, and when you're done, you look at your clock again, 9:15. Okay, I was meditating for 15 minutes. Next time, let me try to expand that a little bit longer. What you would like to do is build up to 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes or more. This would be ideal. And if you're doing 2 or 3 sessions per day, you'll be able to make your way to enlightenment. But let's just think about this for a minute. If you do 2 meditations a day for 30 days, which would be about a month, that'd be 60 meditations in a month. If you got 52, 54, 55 meditations in, you're going to get to enlightenment, right? Your enlightenment isn't determined based on whether you miss meditation today. That's not what's going to determine whether you get to enlightenment. What's going to determine whether you get to enlightenment or not is over the next several years, can you consistently put together enough meditation and enough of the other practices that are going to gradually guide you to enlightenment? So if you miss meditation this morning, you're like, oh shoot, I forgot my meditation. No harm, no foul. Just do your meditation in the afternoon or in the evening, right? No big deal. You're planning for 60 meditations in a month, but if you get 52, 53, 54, 55, you'll be fine, right? There's no harm there. So don't put this pressure on yourself that you have to meditate every day at two times a day, because you're going to forget sometimes, especially as you're building up your practice. You don't have to feel guilty and shameful if you miss meditation. Just look at it and be like, I forgot my meditation. Let me get on top of that, right? So it's not about whether you miss meditation today. It's that if you miss meditation today, what do you do next? Does that turn into 1 week, 1 month, 1 year you're not meditating? Yeah, you're not going to get to enlightenment. But if that's just like, oh, shoot, I forgot my meditation. Let me get right back into that, right? Now you're right back on top of it. You'll consistently put together 3, 4, 5, 10 years of meditating, and you'll be able to make your way to enlightenment. You might notice that there's sleepiness during meditation. This is a common thing that you'll sometimes experience. If you're noticing any kind of sleepiness during your meditation, you kind of have two options. One, you could just change positions, right? Like we talked about, you could move from like a seated or lying position to a standing or a walking position. That's one option. That'll extend your meditation session. Or the second option, just get some sleep, right? You're sleepy, tired, the mind needs some rest, get some sleep. One of the things you're going to notice is when you first start on this path, even if you're sleeping 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day, or however long you sleep, you might notice that your mind has more of a tendency to sleep, and you're sleeping deeper, you're sleeping with better quality, and you might even be sleeping more frequently, especially the first 6 months or so. There's kind of like this little hump that you might be having to work over, because whatever you're doing with sleep now, you might not be getting very good quality sleep. So now when you start training your mind and it starts performing more optimally, your mind might have more of a tendency to sleep. So if you're noticing that you're becoming sleepy during the day, or that you're having a certain sleeping, lots of sleep coming up, this is completely normal. Just get some sleep. There were times where I would sit down to meditate. I'd be 3 minutes, 5 minutes into my meditation. There'd just be this huge sleepiness that would come over the mind, and I would just get some sleep. Sleep for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, wake up, and then start meditating, right? So you can do this. Don't feel like you have to hold on to that meditation. Just let go and then go to sleep and meditate when you wake up. You might notice physical sensations during your meditation. What I mean by this is like little itching sensations, little itches here and there. If you're noticing this, it's best if you can just watch the whole life cycle of this itch. Where say you're focused on your breath and you're noticing the itch, just keep focusing on your breath. You know that itch is impermanent. And the mind oftentimes will have a craving for permanent comfort of the body. And you might feel an urge to hurry up and itch. But if you can restrain your mind from that and just stay focused on the breath, this is going to be really helpful for you. But sometimes you might just really have that strong urge. You might be 5 or 8 seconds into this scratch or this itch, and you just feel like you need to scratch it. So go ahead and scratch it if that's what you need to do. But next time, try to make it longer. 10 seconds, 12 seconds, 15 seconds. Eventually, you can get to the point where you can see the whole life cycle of that itch, that it arises, it changes, and then it fades away. And your mind can be completely comfortable and unaffected by that itch. So that can help you as well. Sometimes people experience visual stimulation during their meditation. What I mean by this is like colors, or like white light or green or purple, certain images. And sometimes people have reached out to me that weren't students of mine and asked me all kinds of questions, right? They're like, oh, David, I saw this green in my meditation. Does that mean I'm going to get rich? Or they'll say, I saw the color purple during my meditation. Does that mean my boyfriend or girlfriend's going to come back to me? It doesn't mean that at all. Right? You're not a special person if these kinds of things are happening. This is very normal. People experience this all the time. I'll explain to you what it is so that you don't have to be confused about this. If you're noticing any kind of colors or imagery while you're meditating, this is because sight happens inside the brain. The eyes being closed, you can actually still see things because the eye is just a lens that brings the light in. And now you can actually do the imaging, and what you actually see is happening inside the brain. So with your eyes closed, you can actually still see things. The brain is one thing. It's a physical organ. The mind, which is what you're training, is non-physical. It's completely separate from the brain. These two things are connected, but they're completely separated, right? They're two separate things. When you're training the mind, which is non-physical and non-tangible, it has an effect to the brain. And when you're training your mind and cleaning it up of these pollutions, the physical structures of the brain are changing. And as that's occurring, it can produce various colors and various images. Doctors and researchers have been studying this. They show that when somebody is meditating, that the physical structures of their brain are actually changing. And when you get to a certain point in your development of meditation, the physical structures of the brain have changed so much that it never changes back to the way that it was before. So this is right along with what the Buddha taught. He taught that once you get to a certain level of development of your mind, that your mind will not regress backwards. And doctors show the same thing, is that when you get to a certain point of changes in your brain development, that the brain never reverts back to the way that it was before. You might actually even hear this occurring. There were times when I was meditating and I would hear, I could hear it and I could feel it in the skull too, because I used to walk around with a bunch of pressure in my skull. I used to get migraine headaches 3 to 5 times a week, to the point where I would oftentimes vomit. And after training my mind with these teachings, I didn't experience that any longer. And the pressure is all gone. There's no longer any pressure in the skull, because the brain has changed to the better way, the way that these doctors are talking about. So that comes through training the mind, not the brain. The brain is just kind of connected to the mind. So as you're training the mind, the physical structures of the brain are changing, and it can produce visual stimulation. And this is completely normal. If you'd like to ever reach out to me and ask me about it, you can, but everybody experiences this. It's very normal. You'll see a lot of people that will have this, and all you need to do is just keep cutting that off and bringing the mind back to the breath. Just keep cutting it off and bringing the mind back to the breath, because that isn't permanent. You won't see those things and experience those things permanently. No need to get pleasant feelings just because of all these colors and all these images that are going on in the mind. Then sometimes people ask me questions about meditating with external stimulus. What I mean by this is like candles or incense or beads or music, different scents or things like this, maybe a phone app or a thing like this. And if you're meditating with those things now, that's where you're at now, right? But what I would suggest you do is get to the point where you only need 3 things to meditate. There's only 3 things that you actually need to meditate. And you'll have these 3 things with you for the rest of your life. All you need is the body, the mind, and the breath. That's it. That's all you need. The body, the mind, and the breath. And the beauty about stripping out your meditation practice to the point where you're just meditating with the body, the mind, and the breath is that no matter where you are, you can meditate anywhere, anytime. Say you're walking through a park, and you're like, wow, it's such a beautiful day. Look at how the lake is glistening with the sunshine. The breeze is blowing. Wow, this is so wonderful. I'd like to sit down and meditate. You can do that because you have everything you need: the body, the mind, and the breath, right? If you're 3 days from civilization in the mountains of Chiang Mai and you're like, I'd like to meditate. Hey, you can meditate. You got the body, the mind, and the breath. But if you have that special candle that you can only meditate when you have that special candle, you're not going to actually be able to meditate because you don't have that special candle with you, right? So you'd like to just be meditating with the body, the mind, and the breath. And that's what's going to ensure that you strip away all these other things. Now, if you're meditating with music or a phone app or something like that, and that's where you're at now, that's okay. That's where you're at now. All you need to do is just gradually move away from that. And the way you do it is just to say you're meditating with music now. Instead of meditating every session with music, do 1 session with it, 1 session without it. Excuse me, sir. We also have this bottle right there. We have Hakuet Kapom. These bottles, we have to take the cap off though. If you could get the cap. Can we take the cap? Can you get the cap on there? Can somebody get it? He can't understand me. P-Cop, C-Cow, can you take care of it? We need that cap. Yeah. Kapkun Kap. We need that one. Otherwise, we can't serve the water. Okay, so what I was saying was, if you are looking to get rid of your music or a phone app or something like this, or candles or incense in your meditation practice, right now, if you're meditating every single time with your music, what you would like to be able to do is do one session with it, one session without it, one session with it, one session without it. This is going to train your mind to be comfortable with impermanence. Because if you just go cold turkey, your mind's not going to like that. It's going to be all shaken up. So if you do one session with it, one session without it, one session with it, one session without it, do that for like a week or so. Then do one session with it, 2 or 3 without it. One session with it, 2 or 3 without it. And then one session with it, 3, 4, 5, 6 without it. So gradually move your mind away from it. Whenever you're implementing something like this in your life, or you're trying to get rid of something that is unwholesome in your life, you can do it gradually like this. So for example, if I was smoking cigarettes, and say I was smoking 20 cigarettes a day, I would go down to 18 for like a week or 2. Then after the mind and the body's comfortable with that, I'd go down to 15 for like a week or 2. Then I would go down to 12 for like a week, or just gradually move away from it like this. And this is going to be a more sustainable change, because remember, the unenlightened mind does not like impermanence. It doesn't like change. It craves permanence. So when you start changing things like smoking or music in your meditation or things like this, your mind and your body is not going to like that. So what you would like to be able to do is just do it gradually, slowly but surely like this, and then your mind is going to be more comfortable with it. And you can do the same thing with wholesome things as well, that if you have a certain wholesome thing that you're trying to implement in your life, you can gradually bring it in slowly but surely like this. They would like some money. What's that? 225 baht? Okay. Tell them that I will send it to their boss by QR code. Chai. Okay. So we weren't supposed to get this until Thursday, but they brought it early, so this is great. Khap kun khap. Khap kun khap. All right. We ran out of water, and I let them know that we ran out. And I said, if you guys are around, I know you're not supposed to be here until Thursday, but if you're around, maybe you could bring it early. So they brought it early. This is great. So you guys can have some water. All right. So any kind of unwholesome thing that you're trying to get rid of, if you do it slowly but surely like this, it'll be a more sustainable change. And your mind almost won't realize that that something is changing, because you're doing it in small little increments. And it's the same thing with something wholesome. Like say you're trying to move to a plant-based food supply. Instead of doing it cold turkey, it's better to do it little by little. Maybe one meal you have plants, one meal you have meat, one meal you have plants, one meal you have meat, or one day you have plants, one day you have meat, and you just gradually increment it like this, where you expand it more and more, because you're going to need things like new recipes, new suppliers, new restaurants. That's going to take you time to gradually figure all that out. So anything wholesome, you can gradually bring it in like that. Anything unwholesome, you can gradually eliminate it like that. Unless it was like something like heroin or cocaine or something like that, you would like to hurry up and get off of that. Go to a detox center, go to a professional place that can help you to get out of that really strong attachment, that really strong craving. But some of these other things, like just music in your meditation, you don't need to go to a detox center, right? You can just do this on your own, right? So this is how you would like to do that. So you'd like to get rid of any kind of external things that you're meditating with, where you can just meditate with the body, the mind, and the breath. So do you guys have any questions on these things? Yes, sir. I didn't know you were awake.
Yes. So you talk about verifying things on your own, mm-hmm. and I know that there's different approaches to meditation, mm-hmm. and what you're suggesting is a very simple and very straightforward, just focusing on the breath, using your body and your mind. But can you speak on anything like mantra-based meditation or breath work? And if any of that could be helpful to achieve these states of mind? Yeah,
let me keep talking here, because you're going to see what the goals of this meditation are. And I'll be able to answer that question for you. I'll be sure to circle back and answer that for you. Because first, let me show you the words of the Buddha on meditation, okay? So here, this is where he's introducing his 4 types of meditations that he taught. He only taught 4 types of meditation. There's thousands that are out there today that people have invented on their own. And oftentimes these meditations are actually taking your mind in the opposite direction of enlightenment. And when you understand what enlightenment is, you understand why. So here's the 4 that he actually taught. Before this, he was talking to his ordained practitioners about 5 things that they would be wise to develop in their life in order to make their way to enlightenment. And he says, having based himself on these 5 things, meaning the 5 things he was talking about before, the monk should develop further another 4 things. And this is where he introduces his 4 types of meditations. He says the perception of unattractiveness of the body should be developed to abandon lust. This is a meditation to eliminate sexual craving, because you can have a lot of craving and now you're agitated and frustrated when you can't have sex. And when you're having sex, you're happy and excited, but when you can't, you're frustrated and agitated. So by knocking that down, it'll really help you. Loving kindness should be developed to abandon ill will. This is like anger, hatred, and ill will, and all the lesser versions, even the slightest dislike towards another individual, and even negative self-talk within your own mind. Then he says mindfulness of breathing, or breathing mindfulness meditation, should be abandoned to cut off thoughts, to cut them off. I'll explain to you guys that here more in a moment. Then he describes this meditation, which is to help you realize non-self. The perception of impermanence should be developed to eradicate the conceit I am. When one perceives impermanence, the perception of non-self is stabilized. One who perceives non-self eradicates the conceit I am, which is nibbana, in this very life. So these are the 4 types of meditation that the Buddha taught. And now what I've done is I've taken these and I'm showing you the wholesome and unwholesome qualities that you're eliminating and that you're cultivating. So with breathing mindfulness meditation, you're eliminating craving, desire, attachment, the mind longing, yearning. Because when you're on the breath, that's developing your focus and your mindfulness, your concentration, being able to focus on a single object. When your mind moves off the breath, that's developing your awareness of mind, that you're aware that the mind moved off the breath. And then when you cut off and let go, that's training your mind to bring the mind back to the breath and let go. Because remember, the underlying problem in the mind is craving, desire, attachment. It's holding on. It's wanting things to be a certain way. And when it gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings. And when it doesn't get what it wants, it gets the painful feelings. So you need to train your mind to let go. So that's what this meditation is doing. It's like taking your mind to the gym and exercising the mind. That anything and everything that comes up during your meditation, you're letting go, letting go, letting go, letting go. Whether it's a wholesome thought or whether it's an unwholesome thought, you're letting go, letting go, letting go, letting go. In daily life, though, you're only cutting off the unwholesome thoughts. If you have a thought to take your mom out to dinner, take your mom out to lunch, give her a call, see how she's doing, no harm in that. Call your mom up. You don't need to cut that thought off in daily life. But if it came up during meditation, you're training your mind. You're taking it to the gym. Cut it off and let it go. You're trying to train your mind to let go. But in daily life, you're not. You can go forward with that. You don't have to cut that off. But in day-to-day life, if you were thinking about punching your boss in the face, cut that off, let it go, right? You're going to have difficulties and struggles if you end up punching your boss in the face, right? That's going to produce unwholesome karma. So this is what you're doing in breathing mindfulness meditation. The goal isn't to eliminate your thoughts. The goal is to notice them sooner and sooner and cut them off and let them go easier and easier. Because that's what's eliminating your craving, desire, attachment. And it's building your mindfulness or awareness of mind and your concentration. So now, Jack, to answer your question, these other types of meditations that people are teaching, like mantra meditation and things like this, what the mind's doing is it's still holding on. It hasn't let go. So what people oftentimes teach you to do is to actually have thoughts during meditation. Look at your thoughts, invite your thoughts in, welcome them in, and these kinds of things. And as long as the mind's doing this, it's not being trained to let go. So you need to be able to train your mind to let go. And as long as the mind isn't doing this, then it's not addressing the underlying cause that's producing discontentedness. So if someone doesn't understand the path to enlightenment and the ultimate goal is to eliminate anger and sadness and frustration and so forth, and the actual cause of those feelings is craving and clinging, the mind holding on, then their meditation practice isn't going to be in line with what the Buddha is teaching, because you need to train your mind to let go. So this is where you'll see sometimes people, even here in Thailand, they will teach you to do things like when you're meditating, they will teach you to say pu to, or sometimes people will teach you to count during meditation or things like this, or listen to music and things like this. But this is still the mind holding on. It hasn't let go. So if I'm counting in meditation, my mind hasn't actually let go. All I'm doing is I'm replacing the thought that I would have had with this counting, or I'm replacing this thought I would have had with puto, or I'm replacing this thought that I would have had with the chanting or the mantra or some other thing. So the mind hasn't actually fully let go in this situation. So you'd like to be able to focus on the breath and train the mind to fully let go, and that the mind can be completely peaceful, completely joyful with the breath. And eventually you'll get to the point where the mind is quieted and still. Right? Where when you first get started with meditation, you'll have a lot of thoughts. You usually get bombarded with thoughts. It's like thought. And people think the way to solve that is to count. But all they're doing is giving the mind something else to think about. They haven't actually let go of the thought. They're just having a different thought, which is the counting. So if you get to a point where you're first starting and you're having all these rapid thoughts, or sometimes what people do is they have a thought and then they will indulge in that thought and follow it for a period of time. And then 2 or 3 minutes down the road, they'll remember they're meditating and bring their mind back to the breath. This is very normal, but this is part of the problem, right? What you ultimately get to is you'll have a thought in meditation, you'll notice it, and you'll cut it off and let it go and bring your mind right back to the breath. And now there'll be this long period of time of quietness and stillness in the mind. That's where the peace and the joy is. But you can't get to that if you're counting, because the mind's not still, it's not calm, right? So enlightened beings still have thoughts during meditation. It's just that they notice them right away and they cut them off and let them go. And then they have these long periods of stillness and quietness in between their thoughts. So you can't get to that if you're counting, or you're doing mantras, or you're looking at your thoughts, you're inviting them in, you're playing with them, you're doing all these other things. So you would like to just get into your meditation, do your meditation, 30 minutes, done and out. It's kind of like if you were going to go to the gym, you could go to the gym, you could look at the TV, you could talk on the phone, you could message people, you could talk to the people around. 6 hours later, you're coming out of the gym, right? Or you could just go to the gym, get your 30-minute, 45-minute workout done, and you're out of there. And you got it done, and you move on with the rest of your day. And that's what meditation is. You don't need to meditate for 6, 8, 10, 12 hours a day. This is unsustainable, right? Because as a household practitioner, you have a job, you have family, you have friends. There's other things in the world to do besides meditation. Who wants to sit around and meditate 8, 10, 12 hours a day? Nobody, right? There's certain people that do that, but if you're just sitting in a cave somewhere meditating for 10, 12, 14 hours a day, you're not going to make your way to enlightenment, because you need more than just meditation, right? If you look at the Eightfold Path, there's 8 individual steps there. So if you do the math, 12.5% is each step. Each step is 12.5%. But then behind each step, that has certain aspects to it too. So behind right concentration, there's 2 aspects. There's meditation, and then there's singleness of mind. So if you boil all this down, meditation is about 6.25% of your practice to be able to get to enlightenment. But sometimes people make that the whole thing. They think that the Buddha sat under a tree, he meditated, and instantly got to enlightenment. So they spend 10, 12, 15 hours a day meditating. And this isn't sustainable, because in order to get to enlightenment, you need to go out there in the world and you need to practice right intention and right speech and right action. So if you go to these retreats that are like 30 days long and everybody's quiet, nobody's talking, it's a silent retreat, everyone's on their best behavior, walking around feeling all enlightened because they've been meditating for 12, 14 hours a day, but But then you go out into the real world. Whoa, what am I supposed to do now? Right? It's a completely different world, right? So what you would like to do is learn how to integrate the teachings into your day-to-day life so that now you can not only meditate, but you can also go out in the world and interact with people in a peaceful and joyful and loving and kind way. Right? That's what you would like to do. So even though this isn't possible, let's just say someone was meditating for 23 hours a day in a cave, but then they went outside for an hour a day and they were bitter and harsh and hostile. They're not anywhere close to enlightenment because they're not practicing right intention, right speech, and right action, and all these other teachings, right? So you would like to be able to understand what the Buddha is teaching you with the meditation is to help you cultivate the qualities that you need to then go out in the world and practice all the other teachings. You have to practice right speech and right effort and all these other teachings, right livelihood, right action, all these things that he taught you. And the meditation is just giving your mind the qualities to then be able to have that wonderful conversation with your friend or family. So meditation is surely important. You wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment without meditation, but you can't just meditate your way to enlightenment. But unfortunately, a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on meditation. So this is the ultimate goal of breathing mindfulness meditation. It's very simple, like you said. It's very straightforward. It's very basic. But because of that, it actually is so challenging for the mind. The mind doesn't want to just sit there on the breath and be peaceful and joyful. It wants to be in the past or it wants to be in the future. Your mind's going to be rambling all over the place. This is what people call monkey mind. You probably heard that before, where the mind's running all over the place, where you would like it to be still and in the present moment. It's going to be pulling and pulling and pulling. It's kind of like if you had a post or a pillar and there were animals tied to it and they kept pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling. They keep getting yanked back and yanked back and yanked back because this rope tied around their neck to the post or pillar, right? And they keep getting yanked back and yanked back to the post or pillar. Eventually, these wild animals are going to realize they're tied to this post and pillar, and they're just going to sit down by that post or pillar. They're not going to keep pulling any longer because they've learned that they can't get free. And your mind is the same way. It's going to keep pulling and pulling and pulling. And if you keep yanking it back and yanking it back and yanking it back, eventually it's just going to be calm and still, and it's going to sit down by that post or pillar, right? But if you give it a bunch of things to think about, like mantras or counting or anything else, it can't be calm. It can't be sitting down by that post or pillar. So that's why the Buddha is teaching you in this way, because it's building the qualities that you need to then put all the other teachings into practice. These other ones, I'm going to teach you guys at different times. Right now, it's not the time to learn all of these, but in this particular course, I focus on this meditation here, the breathing mindfulness meditation. Okay, so a few more words from the Buddha about meditation. He says, a pot without a stand is easy to tip over. A pot without a stand is easy to tip over. The pot is your mind. The stand is your meditation practice. A mind without a meditation practice is easy to become discontent, right? So when you're meditating, it's like making this stand wider and wider and wider. Depending on what you've been doing so far in your meditation practice, you might just have like a little dowel rod and your pot is kind of teeter-tottering. It's really easy for you to become discontent. But if you meditate and you consistently do that, your stand is becoming wider and wider and wider, and it becomes harder and harder for your mind to be shaken up in discontent. So a pot without a stand is easy to tip over. But a pot with a really strong, wide, stable stand, you're not going to tip this pot over, right? That's what you would ultimately like to get to. Here, this next one is the Buddha talking about the importance and the priority and the purpose of breathing mindfulness meditation. He says, monks, there is one thing that when developed and cultivated leads exclusively to liberation, to freedom from strong feelings, to elimination, to peace, to direct knowledge, experience, to enlightenment, to nibbana. What is that one thing? mindfulness of breathing, breathing mindfulness meditation. This is that one thing that, when developed and cultivated, leads exclusively to liberation, to freedom from strong feelings, to elimination, to peace, to direct knowledge or experience, to enlightenment, to nibbana. So what he's saying is there's one goal for this meditation. There's only one purpose for this breathing mindfulness meditation. It's to get you to enlightenment, to get you to the peace, to the joy, to the freedom of strong feelings. He's not saying you only need one thing to get to enlightenment, because otherwise he would have just taught meditation and that's it, right? But we have 45 volumes of books that are this thick. That's the interesting thing about people that spend so much time meditating is what about all those 45 books, right? The Buddha taught more than just meditation, and that's what's going to take for you to get to enlightenment. So he's not saying you only need one thing to get to enlightenment. He's saying that there's only one goal for this meditation, which is to get you to enlightenment. It's kind of like saying this car, it leads to one thing, which is transportation. But you need more than just transportation in order to survive and live your life, right? So this car, it leads to one thing, which is transportation, right? But you need more than just transportation to be able to live a wonderful life. So it's the same thing as this meditation, it leads to one thing, which is enlightenment, but you need other things besides meditation to be able to get to enlightenment, okay? Then in terms of how you do your meditation, what you're going to be doing is focus on the breath. You guys know this because we've been doing this each day so far. And anytime the mind moves off the breath, you cut that off and let it go and bring the mind back to the breath. That's it. Your goal isn't to eliminate your thoughts. Your goal is to notice them sooner and sooner and let them go easier and easier. And understand that sometimes you can have a lot of peacefulness in your meditation, and then next thing you know, things are shaken up. Your meditation practice is impermanent, right? Sometimes people think your journey to enlightenment is going to be like this. That's not the way it is. It's like this. Right? So you can be meditating and everything can be nice and peaceful and joyful for a few weeks, and then all of a sudden it does this. And then after a few weeks, it kind of, straightens out again, and then it does this, right? And then it does this. So be prepared that your meditation practice is impermanent. It's not going to be a clear ride like this to enlightenment. Okay? All right. So any questions on any of this? Okay, so we have about 20 minutes left before 3 o'clock. Let me just end with this, and then I'll give you guys an option here. What I usually say at the end of this talk is I share these words of the Buddha with you, is that the Buddha teaches, meditate, monks, do not be complacent, lest you regret it later. This is my instructions to you. Right? So if you're complacent with your meditation, you're going to regret it later. This is the only thing you'll ever see from the Buddha where he's kind of like, okay, go do something, like go meditate. He never guilt, shames, or fear you into anything. He's just helping you see like, hey, you're going to regret it if you don't meditate, right? Because when you're angry, when you're sad, when you're frustrated, when you're lonely and bored, when you're having resentment and jealousy and fear and guilt and shame, you're going to regret having not meditated. So the Buddha is reminding you like, hey, be sure you meditate. One time my son came into my room about 11 o'clock at night, and he was like, Daddy, it was several years ago. He was like, Daddy, I'm having trouble sleeping. I was like, oh, really? What happened? He's like, oh, they showed this scary movie at school and I can't get the thoughts out of my mind. And I said, have you been meditating? And he said, no. And I said, see, just like the Buddha taught, you're going to regret it later. This is your regret that you haven't been meditating, and now you can't sleep because you can't get those thoughts out of your mind. Whereas if you were meditating, you would be able to get those thoughts out of your mind, right? So you'll regret it later if you don't meditate. That's what the Buddha is teaching you, right? So what I usually say along with this is I say never give up. Don't ever give up on your meditation practice, because giving up on your meditation practice is resigning yourself to being angry and frustrated the rest of your life. And who wants to do that, right? So giving up is like, oh well, I'm just going to be angry for the rest of my life. I'm just going to be stressed and have anxiety the rest of my life, right? So you might go through periods of time where your mind becomes complacent and you would like to jump on that as soon as possible. Don't allow it to be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days that you haven't been meditating, because your mind can become complacent, and it's harder to get it out of that complacency. There was a period of time where I went like 3 years without meditating. It was the worst 3 years of my life, I could say, right? But eventually I got back into meditation, right? So you would like to not allow your mind to get into that complacency. Never give up. No matter what's going on, just stay consistent with your meditation practice. You might miss a meditation session here or there, but don't ever give up on your meditation. Remember, your enlightenment isn't going to be determined on whether you miss meditation today or not. It's what are you going to do next? Can you consistently put together enough sessions, or are you going to allow your mind to become complacent? Because that's where you're going to regret it, having become complacent. Okay, so normally we do a meditation session together, and if you guys would like to do one together, I'll guide you in a meditation session. It's close to 3 o'clock. You know, I said kind of give or take, we would leave and finish class at 3, but I would just like to let you guys know where we're at with the time. It's basically 20 minutes to 3. So if you guys would like to do a meditation, I'll lead you in a meditation. Or you know what I'll do is usually around this time, I start to let you guys do your own meditation. I usually chant, and then I just go into meditation. I don't even give you any guidance. And then we just come out of the meditation with a chant. How about if we do it that way? Give you guys a chance to do it on your own, right? This will help you so you're not always dependent on me to guide you in meditation. So give you a little bit of impermanence. Sound good? Okay, so then that way we can get right into 20-minute meditation, okay? All right, so I'm going to chant, and you guys are welcome to chant along, and then we'll come out with a chant as well. And you guys will be on your own for the meditation, where you just focus on the breath, and then when the mind moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and bring the mind back to the breath, okay? See you guys getting a chanting sheet. Okay. So here we go. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanang Apivateyami Sawakato Bhagavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakhato Rokavitu Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhoto Bhagavati อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะขวาพุทธังมะขวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมะขวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมะขวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. So, any remaining questions on meditation now that I shared that with you this afternoon and you had a chance to practice another session? Anything you guys would like to ask? By the way, welcome to our class, guys. Anything you guys would like to ask? No? Okay. So I'm just going to end today by sharing with you guys what we're going to do tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to start off with meditation, and then I'm going to teach you the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots or the 3 fires. This is going to broaden your understanding of what's really going on in the unenlightened mind and really deepen your understanding of what the Buddha is teaching. Because today you got a little window into that with the 4 Noble Truths. It helps you to be able to see this craving, this desire, this attachment, this longing, yearning that the unenlightened mind does. But tomorrow we're going to expand that for you. We're going to see a bit deeper into the mind and what's really going on. And then also as part of that, I'm going to be sharing with you the solutions on how to fix that. Then I'm going to share with you guys the 5 precepts. These are 5 impactful decisions that you could make either wisely or unwisely. And if you make them wisely, it's going to produce wholesome results. And if you make them unwisely, it's going to produce unwholesome results. So I'm going to help you guys to understand what those are using the original words of the Buddha. And then in the afternoon, I'm going to teach walking meditation, which is really good for an overactive mind. If you have a lot of energy, you can't even imagine sitting down and being still. This is really good for that. Or if you're falling asleep during meditation, this can also help you during that time frame as well. So thank you all for spending time today. Thank you for your interest to learn. Thank you for deciding today's a day you'd like to learn the teachings of the Buddha. And perhaps we'll see you guys tomorrow. Okay? Take care. Be well. Enjoy the rest of your day.